Hello, this is Father Aaron Westman with the Glen Mary Home Missioners, and this is your Missioner Moment. My brothers and sisters, one of the paradoxes that this pandemic has sort of placed before us as human beings is the paradox that somehow from death ultimately comes life. This is really hard for us to really understand as human beings. But I think particularly for us who are Christians, this whole paradox is sort of written into the very foundation of our faith. Some would say it's the very grain of the universe, that from death comes life. Here's what I mean. In the scriptures from this week, and particularly the gospel, we hear the story of the raising of Lazarus. Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. Jesus comes upon this scene in a very emotional, very moving way because he was friends with Lazarus. And Jesus tells Lazarus to come out of the tomb. Of course, people think this is crazy. Lazarus has been dead. But Jesus knows that from death can come life. And he raises Lazarus from the dead. Of course, we know that this foreshadows what will take place in Jesus' own life as he is crucified on the cross, spends 3 days dead in the tomb, and then, of course, is raised from the dead. From death comes life. I don't know about you all, but I have seen hints of this taking place in the midst of these difficult times, and certainly this pandemic has been a time of death for many, sometimes physical, sometimes spiritual and emotional death. Sometimes we have seen the death of our jobs, the death of our finances, and this has all really set us all back to wonder and to ponder. But I think there's also been life. For us here in Cincinnati, the pandemic sort of began at the last days of winter when there was darkness and death and grayness all around. And somehow now in the midst of all this, as if it's a miracle, a gift given from God, spring has begun to spring up all around with birds in the air, flowers and leaves on the trees. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but Pope Francis's prayer in the Vatican this last week was utterly amazing. Here you have a man near death in his own life, struggling to breathe, really having a difficult time walking, entering into St. Peter's. There's nobody around. There's darkness. There's rain. And then in the midst of what is seemingly death, there is life, spiritual life, a profound experience of life for so many people who watched and prayed with the Pope. And of course, there is the story of the priest from Italy. There weren't enough ventilators. So he gave up his ventilator to another person. That priest died. The other person lived. My brothers and sisters, we have to believe with hope in our hearts that from this moment of death, there can come life. And I invite you to reflect on that in your own life at this time. And if you want to, share your stories of life in the midst of death below this video on Facebook so that we can all glory in this paradox that somehow, even in death, there comes forth life. God bless.